Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
We welcome you back to Talk of the Town for this Tuesday, March 23rd. I'm Gary Stevens. One of the things that we mentioned when we expanded Talk of the Town by a half hour at the beginning of February, when we started having this program from 9 to 11:30, is not only to have more opportunities to have open line, especially on days such as Tuesdays when we have a very busy slate, or Thursdays, but also to try to increase the scope of our guests, to include more organizations and individuals on a regular basis, talking about what they do for our community and give you out there a chance to join in the conversation. Along those lines, and what we will be trying to do a little bit more often is to catch up with what is going on at Community Action House. And to tell us more about that, we do have the Executive Director of Community Action House, Scott Rumpsa, along with David Lee, the Project Manager, joining us via the Zoom connection. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to WHTC's Talk of the Town.
Good morning, Gary. Thanks so much for having us.
Glad you are with us. And if you wish to have a conversation with Mr. Lee or Mr. Rumpsa, you don't need to go on Zoom. I am not going to have the 9 square box that we normally see with Zoom. Instead, you can call us over the phone at 395-1450, 395-1450. Scott, first of all, for those, and I always want to make this a point to our new listeners, or maybe some people who are new in the area that are not aware of what Community Action House actually does. Scott, I think you'd be a good person to sort of describe what exactly is Community Action House.
Well, thank you so much, Gary, for the opportunity to share that and for welcoming us on today. So when people are looking at what Community Action House is a community-founded, community-funded nonprofit. We were founded back in 1969 by a group of community leaders and a group of churches that's grown over time to be on the front lines of offering service and support and partnership to some of our most marginalized neighbors who are experiencing challenge and need. Now, we offer our service today in 3 big areas. One is food insecurity. So we offer, service through our food pantry and through the community kitchen. So prepared meals, take-home groceries for neighbors in need. Another pillar is resource connection, where our staff are able to meet with people to address challenges, access new resources. And then the third pillar is financial wellness. So we help partner with people to start building up household assets, building stronger credit, financial management plans, and often culminating with low and moderate income home ownership efforts. Most years, that's 50 to 70 families buying their first home through that program. So, food, connection, and financial wellness are our 3 big pillars. But honestly, we are a community-powered local nonprofit that has 460 plus volunteers working through all of our service lines. And that's what we are, is that community institution that you all power out there. So thank you.
Which of course does lead to this particular observation. The organization may be 50 some years old, but a year ago, organizations such as Community Action House thrown a big curveball because of the COVID-19 outbreak and the extra strain on community resources. How has the Action House responded to this particular, and right now we can say, unique challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a challenging and unique year for us all in all different ways. But I can say, it was 1 year ago last week when everything or so much seemed to change seemingly overnight for us here, just as it did for so many of our neighbors. I will never forget that first Monday after things had started closing down, when, you'll all recall when Meijer and, Family Fare, even those shelves are starting to be emptied through panic shopping. We are on the front lines of providing service and groceries for those who are living on the financial margins at best of times. So we saw lines around the block. We've never served so many people so quickly in so much need as we did through this pandemic. And I can say in 2020, just today, we published our annual report talking about what we were able to accomplish in 2020. We can say it was 3 times the service that we do in normal years and provide. And that's a testimony to how so many in our community came alongside us and worked with us to ensure that we turned nobody away, but also expanded our services while adjusting them for the safety of all, for guests, for volunteers, and for staff, so that we could stay open on the front lines, welcoming and serving so many families that were coming to us for the first time ever.
Now, I don't want to sound like a Donnie Downer on this thing, Scott Rumpsa, but the 3 times increase for the need for the services, unfortunately, I don't think, unless you could surprise me on this, Scott, the 3 times the increased resources coming in to be able to have the Action House provide that, creative opportunities had to be used, I think, for the Action House to be able to take care of those in need so that you wouldn't turn anybody away.
Absolutely. I mean, we've never had to buy as much food as we did this past year, but we've also never had so many neighbors step up alongside of us. And so we are largely community funded. And so, yes, we get some other supports and some other grants, but we've got donors of all levels and churches and businesses that stepped up in different ways and gave to us financially at levels that they hadn't before, that allowed us to expand services. We had the Community Foundation through their Emergency Needs Fund help us to expand early on in the crisis. And I know so many in the community gave to that. And that was a huge deal early on when we weren't sure if we could sustain this. And then we had families, who were looking for a direct connection, pack what we called family food boxes at home through our early Stay Home Fight Hunger initiative. And we had over $100,000 in groceries bought, packaged, and delivered in individual family food boxes by hundreds and hundreds of, our Holland and Zeeland area families who just cared and wanted a way to add a little extra to their own weekly grocery order and to bring food over here to Community Action House, and we would qualify and register people in need and shift those resources right out and get them where they're needed. And honestly, it was a challenge, it was a struggle, but I've been impressed by the resilience and creativity of our staff and their commitment, but also the commitment of our community.
395-1450, 395-1450. If you have a question for Scott Rumpsa, he is the executive director of the Community Action House located here in Holland. And if you have a question about the Action House, some of the services it does provide, or maybe I can put it this way, Scott, there are things that you've had to provide for the community during especially the past year. Are there services that you might have to say, don't go to us? There are other ones that can be able to serve you and help you better than the Action House. Do you serve sometimes as a funnel to divert people to the appropriate agency to help?
Honestly, yeah, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, Gary. We are certainly on the front lines, and we have a lot of capacity because of how the community stands with us to offer service, but we don't pretend to do everything or to solve every challenge. So when you heard me talk about those 3 big program pillars, one we just call connection. There's a lot of what we term resource navigation that goes on in there. Early on in the crisis, we were averaging well over 100 calls a day of people calling on us, just seeking assistance and not knowing where to turn. People know about us through our food service. Sometimes we were able to connect them with other pathways that we have as an organization. But quite often, we're also able to work with people on how they can receive utility assistance through another partner program, how they can receive mental health services through another partner program, how they can work with our good friends at Good Samaritan Ministries on rental and eviction diversion program, which they've had a huge success in scaling up in this time where that is really needed now more than ever as well. So we don't try to be all things to all people, but we do know that so many people turn to us because regardless of situation, we welcome people, we treat them with respect, and our staff have a lot of knowledge about those different resources that folks might not be aware of that are there for them when they're struggling, when they need to stay stable and whole, and when they need to take steps forward. And so we really value that kind of guest services or that resource navigation approach, that people come to us and they trust us to provide that necessary counsel.
Scott Rumpsa is with the Community Action House here in Holland. If you have a question for Scott, he'll take it at 395-1450, 395-1450. How has the attitude been of those who you have served? Some people are a little embarrassed.
Mhm.
Some people are ashamed. Some people feel humiliated. Others feel grateful.
Yeah.
Am I pretty much carrying the whole spectrum of things, or is there maybe some sort of sentiment that you, and I say you as the Action House, Scott,
Mhm.
have been able to notice from people who have been recipients of some of the things that the Action House have been able to do?
Yeah. And Gary, like you say, like there's a whole spectrum. People are in loads of hurt and challenge and shock. And just like you and me, we have a variety of emotions and we express those in different ways. But I can tell you that, by and large, there's, across that spectrum, here's some commonalities. Like when people in West Michigan are coming, and here on the Lakeshore in particular, coming for service to something they've never relied on before, they can feel a lot of stigma and a lot of shame. And they might feel that food pantries are meant for other people, not for people like me. And 41% of our guests since the pandemic kicked off were first time ever coming to us. And we know from them what they expressed early on, and what plenty of them expressed was like that feeling of shame was like, I never thought I'd have to need this. But then there's also gratitude on like, thank you for being here. Thank you for treating me so kindly. And we've received cards, we've received notes, we've received messages, both from our food assistance programs, but also other programs we offer. Right now, we're offering volunteer income tax assistance to help people in a very complex and difficult tax year with job changes and unemployment and different things that have gone on in family lives, and helping some of our low-income guests navigate that through some volunteer professionals that we've organized. We're getting cards from that as well and saying, thank you, not just for the technical help, but thank you for the kindness, because one of our core values since 1969 has been we're a place where struggle should never equal stigma. People shouldn't feel that. We are here so that folks have that local flexible partnership opportunity, that local flexible safety net, that when they fall, we're there with them to partner on a way forward. And I'm encouraged that people are feeling that by and large.
Scott, you've been on the board. I mean, you've been on board for about 3 years or so. You were on board for a couple of years before what happened a year ago when the outbreak did come about. So you're a little aware of what the Action House was able to do and did do prior to March of 2020. What things have the Action House been able to add to its repertoire, for a lack of a better term, or be able to be flexible and pliable enough to sort of develop and learn new skills, dare I say new tricks, to be able to, meet the needs in a unique situation such as we're in right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I, I'm very glad that I had the opportunity to be on board with this incredible team and community here at Community Action House for a couple of years before this kicked off. I feel that we had built up enough understanding and trust to be able to stretch in this direction. And you mentioned like what changed, and like, the short answer, the short question is like, what didn't change? Because I can't really think of much. So some of the things that I was encouraged that our team had the creativity and ability to adjust into on our present programming is our food pantry couldn't serve people inside at the beginning of the day. So we had to move to a scheduled in advance. We didn't want lines around the block, like a lot of pantries around the country we saw move to, just saying, we'll be open on Monday. And what happens then in a time when people are insecure and scarce is they will come and line up at 6 a.m. and it will stack up around the block. So we spun up a scheduling system that sent people reminders, just like you and me going to a dentist office or a doctor's office, said, hey, we are guaranteeing you the food you've registered for at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, or a time that we've selected together. We built a new scheduling system, all the reminder system, so that all 5 days of the week, people knew that they could come and they weren't in a panic, and they also weren't spending 2-3 hours of their time waiting in line and wondering when the pantry might run out. So we scheduled people, and that was a big shift. We set it up curbside. Some of our partners at Disher came and they built a shelter so that in all weather we could receive donations. We could have cars driving through and receiving grocery assistance. So that's one thing. The community kitchen, which used to be sit-down prepared meals for 150 to 180 folks a day, had to also convert to to-go meals. So how do we package? How do we package safely? How do we serve people safely in a to-go interface? Like a lot of our friends in the restaurant business had to, struggle and deal through all that change. We at the community kitchen had to learn new skills for how do we offer to-go service in a helpful and welcoming way and an efficient way for our guests. So those are a couple of those things, but some of the bigger changes were some new programs and new ways of acting that we added. So historically at our food pantry, folks would come inside and receive service, but one of the best things they'd get is one-on-one time with our resource navigation team. And they'd be able to kind of address those challenges, access those resources we were talking about. Early in COVID, we couldn't do that. So we had to build a new system and a new database to track who was coming to us for food needs. But our team would then make sure that every new guest was receiving a call, not only speaking to somebody when registering for that appointment, but a check-in call a week later to address other challenges that household might be experiencing. Because if you're stuck without food, there's something else going on too. And so I was very heartened by the feedback we got when giving those calls, but we were able to build that capability in kind of an outbound resource navigation calling team. That was huge. Another big change was joining the Community Foundation, Movement West Michigan, and Good Samaritan with a direct cash assistance program. Early on, a lot of the federal support flowed to a lot of people, but there were some families and some folks that missed out on some of those opportunities early on. And so there was a locally funded cash assistance program that we were able to work with a lot of our guests and qualify them for some of that additional assistance so that they had the flexibility to meet their own needs, whether it was, my car's broken down, or I have no choice and no flexibility and all sorts of stress and need to buy maybe my daughter a birthday cake so we can have some normalcy, even though I've lost my job, I'm waiting on other resources and don't have something else going on. So I was encouraged the ability to spin up those new programs. Some other stuff we also launched over the course of the year was the income tax assistance program that we have, as well as a emergency savings club to help some people start rebuilding those savings accounts that were depleted through this crisis. And so overall, lots of new stuff, lots of change, but yeah, it's team's creativity and community support that's allowed it to happen.
Scott, I would have to ask this, basically as a news director. It's been a year since the COVID-19 outbreak did change a lot of things. And what we're seeing now, in some instances, people are getting sick and tired of this. And it's, to be honest with you, it's human nature. Just we're ready. We're ready to be done with this all. How, to a certain extent, is the Action House in the same boat, or have you been able to rise above maybe the pandemic fatigue that seems to grip us a little bit right now?
Well, Gary, I mean, that's a good question and reflection, honestly. Like, it's who is enjoying this and who is not incredibly tired of it all, right? It's been an incredibly challenging year, and we're emotionally exhausted, and we miss hanging out in groups. I miss that, with my extended family and everybody else, the large groups and larger friend groups all together. And who doesn't miss that feeling of normalcy? And I personally can't wait till this summer when I do believe we'll all be back more to normal, as we're on this down ramp and on the trajectory with vaccines coming out. As an institution, we're tired. I think a lot of the businesses, a lot of organizations, and just a lot of people that have been through so much change and so much challenge are exhausted. But what keeps driving us every day is knowing that, this is a special time and calling for an organization like ours to be on the front line, because all of our staff and so many of our core volunteers and supporters know that we were founded exactly for times like this, to make sure that when the chips are down, when there are incredible challenges like this and people are losing work, in droves and having things change and need a kind and welcoming and flexible community of support, that we're there and that we can step into that and we can grow into that. And so while, yes, it's been exhausting and we miss sitting down with our guests and eating all together with 150 folks at the community kitchen, we can't do that right now because of COVID. We can't wait to gather with everybody again. But at the same time, we're encouraged by living out our calling and our mission to be on the front lines, offering assistance with food, clothing, shelter, and opportunity, just like we were founded to do with that welcoming interface. So, it's a balance, between burnout and calling, and we're trying to be intentional about it. And no perfect answer to that right now.
One final thing, Scott Rumpsa, how can the community help the Community Action House?
Well, one, I'd start out by saying thank you to all those who joined for the first time volunteers, first-time financial, donors, and others that have helped us step up. But we do also recognize that as the world starts feeling back to normal, like many of us this summer, we know it'll take a lot longer to rebuild for so many who were on the financial edge even before this kicked off, and that this sent it to a deeper tailspin. It's going to be a year of, again, historic levels of service for us as we help folks rebuild. And I would invite everybody who is willing to find ways to stand with us this year as we further evolve our programming to help people into rebuilding mode. We've got exciting new programs launching you'll be finding out about if you check out our annual report. Go to our website, communityactionhouse.org. Check out our annual report, check out updates on what's coming. And also there's pathways to get involved as volunteers, financial supporters, and even in-kind supporters as we continue to serve at very large levels. And we need you guys to do that.
And of course, if you want to get that annual report, that helps not only you to know, and I say you, the listeners, to know what Community Action House has done, but what you can do to help. There is a way to get that report besides going to the Community Action House website, right?
Yes. So if you would text 2021 to the number 66599. So text 2021 to 665.
Sorry about this. It's actually 2020 report to 66599.
Okay.
All right. We got that right from David Lee, who had been monitoring this conversation with that. But again, text 2021 to, 2020. I got that right there now, David. 2020 to 66599. Scott Rumpsa, David Lee from Community Action House, thank you very much for joining us today on Talk of the Town. Again, we'll put a link to the Community Action House's website when we put the podcast of our conversation on our webpage at WHTC.com. Scott and David, thank you very much. Let's not be strangers, shall we? And we look forward to chatting with you again a few more times in 2021. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Gary.